I'm sorry, babies.
Oh, sweet. Here's a mess. Sweet. Okay.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is session 20, demonstrating the progress of this gaming project I've been working on. It's been a battle, definitely a learning curve, especially when it comes to doing some new things. But anyway, what I wanted to show in this stream was just to give you an update on some of the enhancements and things that were added with regard to the user interface or the HUD. In the previous stream, we of course demonstrated the health icon, the armor defense, and I don't know if we demonstrated the stamina or not. Anyways, let's go ahead and run this. I'm just going to run it and show it through a demonstration here real quick. I'm going to try to keep this stream short. I've got some things to do today, but anyway, so if you look in the bottom left, we have the heart, which represents health, the shield for your defense or armor, and we have a stamina. And if you see, if I'm running normal, I mean, it doesn't use any of that, but if I start sprinting by hitting the shift key, you can see it's tracking the usage of that stamina, and the icon, the green silhouette, which is turning black as it empties, you just kind of track that. Once the stamina is out, you'll see the player does stop running. This is definitely not something that you can create overnight when you're trying to develop a game. It takes time. Okay, so this will be, like I said, a long-term project. Expect to see streams going on for the next 6 months, maybe longer. Just kind of depends on how things go. As some of this is developed, you know, I was able to build out this area here that I'm running around right now in about a day, and it's really not complete. But once the main mechanics of the game are in place and things are working, there'll be a lot more changes going on with the environment and locations throughout the map. So I'm holding down the shift key just to show you it will not recharge while you're walking if you're holding down shift. So you got to let go of shift. And as soon as I did, you see starting at the feet, it's starting to refill the stamina. Okay, now the other thing I have in the top right corner, if you look, there's a pot of gold, and it's just ticking away. It's going up by 5. I added some test code to to make sure that that was working as well. So basically what it's showing is whatever your current gold is, your gold value on the player manager, as you earn gold throughout this. Right now we're not at a point where we're issuing gold anywhere in the game. So I had to simulate it for now just by adding, like, every second you get 5 gold. And it may be a good incentive too to give away so much gold for playing a certain amount of time. I don't know about 5 gold every second. That's quite a bit. But I mean, it may be something I might leave. Maybe we'll go with 1 gold per second. So if you just stay in the game and play, you'll earn that gold. But the other thing we have to the right of that is that's going to represent the player rank. As you can see, he's at rank 7 already. Again, I'm simulating that by giving him free experience points as the game progresses. So that is going at a rate of 10, I believe. 10 experience points. And the ranks go progressive at a rate of 1.25. So what I mean by that is, like, the first rank started at 100 experience. So you start at 0. Every second he was getting 10, and that first rank went up pretty quick. And then it does a multiplier of 1.25, so the next one is going to be 125 to go to rank 2, and then 1.25 of 125 to go to rank 3, and so forth. So it's a continual multiplier, so it takes longer to get to each rank. And obviously later on there'll be some rewards for reaching each rank, and that might be one thing I see right away is obviously you should get some free gold for earning that rank. And so rather than have this ticker going where you get so much, as you level up, you'll get some obviously get experience, which gives you rank, but you're also getting gold. So anyways, the ranking system, I thought that'd be a nice way to display it up there. Those 2 items were put together similar to what we did with the heart and the shield and all that. Obviously, the ranking one took a little bit longer. The pot of gold is simply just that, just an image I found on Google Images and stripped away any background part of it and made it a little transparency around the edges. And so the gold value of the player, whatever's collected, is just displaying over the top of that icon and kept within what I considered the printable or displayable area on that side of that pot. As the numbers increase, you'll see the font size gets smaller. So when we hit 5 digits, it'll always auto size to fit within that space. So it should never go over the left or right side of that pot of gold. With the rank, it's really consisted of 5 different images. Of course, the kind of the leaflets on the left and right side, they're essentially acting like a filler. It uses a filler, a mask, and a base image or a background image, which is the light part of the leaflets that you see. The fill is, of course, the goldish color that shows up, and the mask, of course, was like the leaflets, but a different color. Just like we did I think I demonstrated the stamina bar before. So anyways, that's what I've been working on. I just wanted to finish out the final UI elements and put those up there. And so I started working after that on the ability to add, well, I was trying to work with the prop system that comes with the Morph 3D character, and they had 2 prop points, but they only had 1 prop, and it appeared that you could only use the props that they provided or buy their kits. And so they only had one prop, which was the pistol, which was not going to work for what we're doing here. We have other props that we want to pick up and actually equip in the the character's hand, the player's hand. So kind of been playing around. I kind of figured out through a couple of video tutorials they had and a little bit of experimentation and just discovery on my own how I could tap into their system and use the props that I have, the ones that I want to use. And right now you see there's nothing equipped in the quick bar slot on the bottom there in slots 1 through 6. Oh, and that's the other thing I modified. In the last stream, we didn't have the numbers 1 through 6 in the black boxes. Those are indicating what hotkey you need to press to use that particular item in that slot. And I also added, I modified, I should say. Originally, I had the slot numbers in the top left corner, 1 through 6, but I changed that to the bottom so that I can be consistent with the way we have the inventory screen, which is the quantities show up in the top left corner. So you'll see in slots 3, 4, 5, and 6 there's a 0, of course, for the values, but because we haven't picked anything up. But those are the quantities shown for any items that are stackable. The quick slot 1 and 2 here that's shown in this bar directly correspond to our primary weapon slot and our secondary weapon slot. So you'll only ever see a primary weapon in slot 1 and a secondary weapon in slot 2. Currently, what I'm working with in this test environment is just a pistol for the primary weapon and a bat for the secondary. So you'll see if I pick up, for example, pick this up, it immediately shows it in slot 2. If I hit inventory, you'll see it's actually down here, which is our secondary slot. So it's mapping it to the quick bar that's shown here. Now we can pick up some of these first aids and see they'll show up. Let's get a pistol there. Actually, we're going to need that. I want to demonstrate something. And so you see the first aid kits are stacking up. That one despawned on us. Pick up some ammo. Oops, that despawned as well. Just run around here and pick up some items real quick. I haven't even gotten to the point where I've spawned in any enemies yet or anything like that. I want to get, once I get the pistol, when I'm close to it, to the point where I can actually fire and equip it properly, and as well as using the secondary weapon, the bat. Let's move these out. Slide these down here. Let's get a bottle. The bottle water is what I was using. It's actually, like I said, it's a bottle water, but I'm using it for a way to recharge the armor right now. It's really just a placeholder for something when I get a high quality set of props, and I'll probably look at something that has a lot more than what we currently have, of course. I was hoping I'd find some more just to stack them up. Anyways, the stackable items are there, and I believe I demonstrated the fall damage on the last stream. If you missed that, we go ahead and get up top here, and that's probably the best way. Of course, I'm out of stamina. There's no way to recharge stamina other than to let it recharge over time. Initially, I was actually going to use the bottled water for the stamina, where you just, you know, drink it and it recharges that. But I felt, you know, maybe we'll have another item down the road that can do that to help speed up that if you want to boost it up quicker. But right now I decided to put a just a timer, and it recharges at a slower rate than the use rate. So keep that in mind. That's why it's taking a little bit longer. I believe the use rate is at a rate of 15 versus a recharge rate of 10. So if you want to percentage-wise, I mean, it's well, it's really not a percentage, it's just a factor that's used. It's actually using a calculation to determine the fraction of a second, you know, how much is actually used. So, like, it's a small amount, but it's the usage it gets expended quicker than the recharge rate. All right, so we have a few of those now. So let's drop off, or let's run and drop. You'll see the armor is the first thing that goes. And so we could hit item 4, which we have 6 of the blue bottles. Hit that, it'll recharge. I have those set at a certain value, so it'll only recharge a certain amount. I believe it's 25% on the bottled waters and the first aids are at 50. So I'm gonna use 2 of them. And you see it properly updates the count. I actually never got beyond level 13 on the rank up there. I generally am, because I'm testing and going through iterative testing and changing and modifying and going back out, you know, looking at the logger, and never had it go this far. I just wanted to see how far it would actually get while we're on stream here. Oh, the other thing I did want to show, the reason I picked up a pistol and a bat, like I said, I figured out how to tap into the what they call the prop point system. You can set up other prop points on this character anywhere. Actually, on anywhere you want, you can add a prop point. It's actually tied to a bone. You go through and look at the bone structure that's on this character and attach a prop location to any point or on any bone. But I went with the 2 that they had already in place, and I was trying to, like I said, use these props here. And you can see, let me hit 1 now that I have a gun equipped. See what happens. It does equip it at the hand, but the direction of the pistol and all that is not in place. Once I get that pointing the right direction, you see when you jump, and wherever his hand moves, it's staying with it. So once we get to the point where we have it facing the right direction, then we can look at doing the aim. Now if I want to switch to the bat, of course it'll do that. But you see, the bat is just, you know, it's in the wrong place as well. So that's the next thing I'm working on is you know, I've tried to play around with the rotation on the master item that's pulling in here, and it doesn't seem to want to take that change. It just seems to set it in that same position. So it may be that, you know, these props have to be created somehow in the more 3D system and included where they're already set up when you attach it to that that position. You know, then it's set. You know, it's set exactly where it needs to go. But I feel there's a way to get around that, and that's kind of what I'm doing. Again, I'm trying to work around the stuff without spending money and buying, you know, these expensive prop kits and things like that. Well, they're not really that expensive, but I want to do everything for free. And so far, everything I've done here with what you see has been done with free props from the Unity store, free items, or free, you know, characters, or everything's been free. I've been just looking through the Unity asset store and using free items. And I've scripted everything, you know, myself. I wasn't going out buying any kind of scripting assets, or, you know, other than what came with, you know, some of them come with, like for the animation of this character just sitting here, they've got idle animations and jump animations, and it's all built into the character. So I haven't done any of that, but like I said, I'm trying to tap into their prop system. Now, obviously I can switch between those. 1 or 2, I'm just tapping button 1 or 2 on the keyboard and switching between those weapons. But I have no way to just completely remove the props as of yet. It's actually really easy, and we're going to do that here in just a second, so you can kind of see where that's, where that's at. Let me close. That's just the inventory. Let's stop that. We didn't get to. I wanted to break 10,000 gold, but that's all right. I'll do that another time. I'll let it run overnight one time and just see if it crashes, if it goes up to a certain value. Anyways, let's look at our scripting. Well, before we do that, let's look at the more 3D character here. And I'll show you what I'm referring to. If you go to more 3D, now this is in the project hierarchy. The male figure here. Let's see. Well, I'll tell you, we don't need to go there. I forgot. I have a prefab already set up for this. It's under player. Let's drag that in there. Okay, so and let me zoom in on that so you can kind of see. All right, so that's the character. If we expand this out here, we look down, we click on 3D male. I'm sorry, let's go back to the main screen. Let's expand this out because you really, for some reason, it doesn't like the buttons were missing at first, and I was like, where are they at? You can't add a prop. But again, let's expand this out because it's apparently hard coded at a certain value beyond these items. But anyways, they have these what they call these content packs, and initially none of this was on there. You come with it actually comes with a character that's not even clothed at all, has no clothing on him, and so you have to drop stuff out of the included content pack. So again, let me expand this out here. Let's shrink this. Let's get where you can see. Okay, the more 3D is here. Yeah, under the content here. See, if I go to the male 3D, you can see right here when I click on him. See, there's nothing on him right there. And so once you drop them in, that's what you have, is a character with no clothing. And so you have to go to their content packs. Now they have, under the urban metro outfit, you basically find these different items here. And they have these pants here, these urban pants, as you can see. And so you just drag them on your character here where the content pack is. You just drag that item and drop it into this where it says new, this game object, and it'll add it to the content pack list. So I did that with the basic clothing they had, and if you look at see, they only had this one pistol here. That's the pistol they have, and that was it. There were no other props included with it. So the way you add a prop though is going back to the you have to first of all pull the model into the scene. And that's why I have this. And that gives you access to this character manager script. You can't really play around with that from what they call the prefab. You have to pull it into the scene, and then you can work with it there. You'll see these settings. But so anyways, under the content packs, now these last two that I added, the Brit is to here, but these two, the pistol and the baseball bat, were the ones that I added from the items that I've used. But I couldn't just add the base one. I also couldn't use the ones that I have in the master inventory. I had to create a separate copy of these, the pistol and the baseball bat, because the ones that I had were set up for the master inventory, were set up for the spawning system. And so the first time I tried to use one, well, number one, it wouldn't even load, but once I got it working, I still had it would like despawn after a while, because there were some default values set in the script that's attached to the items that are in the master inventory folder here, or master inventory folder. So I had to create a new folder here called props. And I took the basic baseball bat, just the original it was under the Survivor pack. Basically the original prefab they had, which is essentially, if you look at it, that's all it was. Basic game object with the transform, the mesh renderer along with the mesh, the baseball bat mesh to render that, and then it had a box collider, so it could, it could detect collisions and things like that. But so anyways, I pulled that over into a copy of each of those into the props folder, and then try to simply add it and drag it into the Morph 3D content pack, which is new here, game object, because it says game object. So I tried to just grab it in, but it wouldn't take it. It would drop it in, it would act like it was going to take it, but it didn't show up at first. So I finally started playing around. I had to look at, and that's the reason I was dragging this over. I had to take a look at the prop that they provided, the one and only. And they leave like breadcrumbs, I think is what they're doing. They want you to figure this out on your own, and if you have any, with persistence and a little, patience and hopefully a little understanding, you can figure it out. But anyway, let's drop theirs in so I can show you. And so with that dropped in, well, actually I don't even have to drop it in. What we need to look at was over here. If we look at the inspector, this is how theirs were set up. I was looking at what was different, and I noticed it has some other guns there. These are different ones. The LOD 0, LOD 1, 2, and 3. And LOD stand for, if you ever see that and you wondered what LOD is, that's level of detail. So the further away, your perspective is, your camera is from this item, the game engine will automatically, if this is in place, will change out to a different level of detail based on how the LOD system is set up. And so when you're further away, you don't need all that detail, but when you're close up, you do. So you'll get the first one, which is the basically LOD 0, which is the should be the most detailed version of that. And so anyway, without getting sidetracked on that, so let me hold on one second. Hey. Where's the other baby? Where's the other one? Where's the baby? Is she with you? Where is that? Alright, sorry about that. I had to check on. I thought I had some cat wars going on over here. Cat's tying up. It's the kittens. Anyway, so without wasting a whole lot of time on this, I mean, that's what I wound up doing was looking at the inspector for the prop that they provided, and it looked like they were using some, DAZ 3D is apparently the program that they use to model this. The Morph 3D system is, a separate system written by them that does the character morphing and all that and creates these models they use. But anyways, it looked like they had some specific things that they included on theirs. They had this core mesh script, and they had a regular mesh renderer, and their mesh filter was a little bit different, but yeah, so anyways, I dragged and dropped it in there. So I knew I needed this core mesh thing. It was something a little bit different. And also, let's go back to, let me go real quick here. Okay, let's go back to the, okay, so we have these 3 items in there. The pistol, baseball bat, which are from our props, and the 9mm pistol. Now, the way you attach it to is this category here for attachment point. You can put it on one of the 2 attachment points they already have. They've got a left hand and a right hand. And these names are very specific and you need to know the exact spelling, capitalization, everything if you're going to do any scripting behind the scenes to attach an item to it. So anyways, what you can do is expand the arrow, and there's this add prop that shows up under the right hand. And you do a search, and it looks at any of the props that have been preloaded in the content packs. So apparently the way their propping system works is you add the props to the character, and then then you would spawn a character in the world, and you have this props that he can equip. I guess they go with the character, and so I didn't see any way to actually add a prop initially. There may be, because now that I've figured out where I need to go to add the prop at runtime to the player's prop collection. Let's put it that way. It looked like you had to pre-populate the props through here and then add them. At least that's what one of their videos from this that I watched showed, adding it in here. Now they didn't necessarily attach it here. They showed how to, through code, how to attach a prop then from the prop collection to one of these attachment points, or what they did was create a new point, because they were putting a helmet on a head and something else on, like a jetpack on the back. So they were showing how to add actually a whole new prop point. So you can add, like I said, you can add any of the points you want to here. Alright, so anyways, we're going to hit search, and that comes up right here, this window. And we'll just choose the 9mm that they provided. It's LH_9mm pistol. Let's select that and add. So just selecting it selects it, but doesn't actually add it where you can see. You have to hit the add button where you see it. Now you see that their prop is actually pointing in the right direction. But so anyways, once you do that, you see in the character here under now it shows available props, and it's showing the pistol and the baseball bat and the 9mm. But when you look at it, the 9mm that was added, it adds 2 additional scripts. They have a script called C space iProp. It's a script, or CI prop. And it looks like it added another script called Core Mesh Metadata. And that's the name of the script, Core Mesh Metadata. Now I searched. I could not find Core Mesh Metadata at all. It looked like they had a script that was specific. It was kind of embedded in their DLLs, like when you import their kit. It's included in there. It almost looked like they were trying to force you to only use the props that they had. So anyway, I did some poking around. I haven't seen any videos anywhere on how to add an external item to the prop collection. But I'll have to say, I successfully was able to do it after some trials and errors and comparing and searching. I found, now if we click on our pistol, I found some scripts that were out there when you install this. They're not named exactly the same, but by adding these 3 scripts, well, 4 really, the core metadata script, the core mesh script, and the M3D or the more 3D prop script, you add those 3 scripts, and then I gave the item IDs, the item ID and the item name. I named it the same as my actual prop, like pistol or baseball bat in the case of the baseball bat. And for the collection name, I put Harvest, because if you look at what they had collection name, they actually had the firearm pack. So they apparently have a firearm pack, which they only include in this sample free light version, 1 prop out of the pack, but they apparently have a pack they want to sell that includes all that. And the mesh type, under CI prop needs to be prop, and when it's attached, that item is checked. But so anyways, I had to do some comparison, and I wound up finding the scripts, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't find core mesh metadata script, but I did find scripts that were independent. There was a core mesh, and then there was a core metadata. So between the two of them, I figured it provided whatever functionality it needed. And then I added this prop script. Initially, it wouldn't seem to add right, or when it did add right at first, I couldn't remove the prop from the prop collection properly, and there were some like ghost references left out there that were causing issues. So basically, adding these 4 scripts takes care of that. You have to set up the rank and the function. I just set it as an item, and of course in the core mesh script, I made sure it was set, mesh type was set to prop. And same with the CI prop, mesh type prop. And as far as the DAS name, like I said, I just put the same names as what my item names were from my master inventory collection, the ones that I was using. And of course, these are the stripped down versions, the original sprites only, not the ones that we had our spawning scripts attached to and all that. So anyways, once I created those, I put them in the base props folder, and you'll see that's what we have set up. So so that was a challenge right there, just getting it where I could add it to their prop system here and have it showing up, where as in the content pack area over here. And of course, I could easily just click X to remove an item, and I could remove the 2 that I have. But I'm going to leave those because I have scripting already that's depending on those. And like I said, I used their attachment points. I didn't add any new attachment points. The right hand is the only one I was using. So if we go to the scripting side, I'll show you how that was done. Okay, first of all, okay, here's the actual code that will attach to prop. But before we do that, there's some stuff that needs to be set up. Let's look at the top of this script. This is a script that I already had, Player Manager, and of course we've been adding to it as we go. The first thing I needed to do was add these 2 using statements to include Morph3D and Morph3D.costuming, which will allow you to work with anything functionality they have for costuming or outfitting your character. And then I had to set up 2 variables here. They're private variables, and another bool that's used to indicate if they're an attachment on or not. I have a bool called on, and it's either set to true or false. So, and they have a CI attachment point variable type or object, and the M3D character manager. You need a reference to the character manager, which has the functionality built into it to deal with the props in the prop system. So create 2 variables there, charman and rhand for the right hand attachment. That's the variable name I'll use in code here. And these were experimental. Like I said, that didn't work out. I was trying to just use the regular game object in Unity. And actually I did see there is a way to do that, so I'm going to play around with that. If I can't get the direction of the gun to change, I may have to do it through a game object, which my game object, if it'll allow me to add a game object and manipulate the rotation and positioning through the game object, that's going to work perfect. And that may be what I think we're going to need to do. Anyways, so what I have right now is those variables set up, and then down here in the start, of course I added to what we already had. We got a crosshair now. I don't know if I mentioned that. We do have a crosshair, so there was a variable set up for that, and we get a reference to it and it's set it to false where it's not showing. The crosshair comes into play when you right-click the mouse. The little crosshair will show up for aiming, and it'll disappear when you release the right mouse button. So I'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. And again, this was experimental code that didn't work. But here's the code to initialize a reference to the character manager. And also, I commented out, again, some experimental code that didn't work. I was trying to use the create attachment point, but I was using the wrong function. That's in the video I watched, they were creating a new attachment point to the head and in the back, and I was thinking it was referencing an existing one, but this is a function that creates a new attachment point, like it says, create attachment point on bone, and you give it the bone name. And so I was trying to pass in an attachment point name as a bone, but that's not a bone name, so it wasn't working. So I found this other function that there was no video for, even in More 3D or anything related to. I could not find anything about this, how to use an existing attachment point that they already created in their characters, especially the light character. But there's a function they had called get attachment point by name. So it lets me get a reference to the right hand attachment point that's already there, and I just passed in the exact name with capitalization of the attachment point name that they had. And I had one set up for the left, but I wound up not using it because our gun and baseball bat, our primary secondary weapons, will be right hand. And I may down the road change it where give the player or user a preference. If they're, in real life they're left-handed or right-handed, it's their preference. They could switch it to either hand, so that it would be as easy as just referencing the other variable, creating a reference to the attachment point for the left hand, and attaching the props over there. So anyways, that's the code in the start. It does it one time only when the script is ran. The first time the start is run, and that's where it's set up. And so now in the update function here, which is called every frame, we already had this code here for all this falling and taking damage on a fall, and that our left shift key is for our sprinting. That's where it adjusts the stamina. And down here is where I added the hotkeys. And in Unity, they're using their input class. They have a static class called input, and they have these keys that are predefined. These key codes are defined by a name that reference the actual keys. So alpha 1 is your alphanumeric, the number 1 that's on the alphanumeric keypad, not the numeric keypad on the right. So I'm not mapping to that. I'm only mapping to what's above the ASWD keys, which your fingers will be right there. So your 1 through 6 that are up there. So it's alpha 1 through alpha 6. Now, items 3, 4, 5, and 6 are actually using a function I wrote called use quick slot item. And I'm passing in, the number that's being passed in is the what index value it's actually mapping to in the player inventory array that we had created a while back in the player inventory UI player inventory script. So if you recall, 0 through 4, which is 5 different items, that was for the primary weapon with all the attachments, and then item 5, index 5 in that array was the secondary weapon, and then 6, 7, 8, 9 were the quick slots, what we call our quick slots, where you can load items, and then 10 all the way through 25 were the remaining items that show in the general inventory item, like carry items you could have in your player inventory backpack. And so this index is referencing that. That's what that number is. So specifically, and same with the function I wrote called attach right hand prop. I'm passing in the index of the item that it wants to reference. So when you press hotkey number 1, which is gonna, if you recall when we were running through the screen, when you pick up the gun, it shows up in that slot 1, the hotkey 1 that's showing up on the screen or in the bottom middle of the screen. But actually, even though it's key 1, alpha key 1 that you're going to press, it maps out to index 2 in the player inventory array. Again, our player inventory array is a fixed set that's been very defined with a specific structure, and so that's how we can use that directly. It's player item 2, basically index 2 references the primary weapon, which is the pistol, if it's equipped in there. So as part of these here, if you hit key 1, it's going to call this function, but in these function, of course, checks both in the use QS item and attach. Right? It checks to see if that slot is empty. If it's empty, it's not going to execute the code that's in these routines. But so anyways, and 5 is our secondary weapon. So we're passing in the index for the secondary weapon. So looking at 6, 7, 8, 9 is what maps to quick slots 3, 4, 5, 6 on the screen. So if we look down at there's our code for getting the mouse button. Button 1 is actually your right mouse button. Button 0 would be the left, and button I believe 2 is your middle. Usually your scrolly wheel. When you push it, it becomes a third mouse button. But so they're mapped to values 0, 1, 2 in Unity, and so I'm passing in. We're trapping basically the right mouse button there. So now we're just toggling it on and off. If the crosshairs, you know, if it's not equal to null, then we're going to set hit it once. Going to set the active to true on mouse down and mouse up. When you release your mouse button, it'll toggle it to false, which means it won't show it. Here's also while we're here, we'll just show this little snippet of code where I'm doing. I set up a variable up top of the script called last free giveaway, and so we increase the last free giveaway by, at the end of this, we add first of all 5 gold, and we do add 10 experience to the player stats, and then we reset the last free giveaway time to whatever the current time is in this game, plus 1.0. F stands for floating point, but 1.0, this is equivalent of 1 second. So we're adding 1 second to the current time. So every second it'll do the giveaway and add 5 gold and 10. That's how we do that. I mean, I could readjust that easily by changing it to 5 for 5 seconds, this value right here, or any other value. But again, this is for testing. Just in testing to make sure that the UI part was visually appearing correctly and matching what the values were and representing visually the values of the player gold, experience, and the ranks. So experience is actually the leaflets. As you get experience, those leaflets go up. They get filled in. When it reaches the top, it's reached. There's a variable that tracks what the experience level needs to get to. So anyways, that's the code for that. That's being updated checked every second, every frame. But here's the. Let's go first to the use quick item. I think we went over this before. Maybe we didn't, but essentially we pass in an index value. Like we said, we're passing in the index value that's going to check the player inventory array, and if that item name exists, if it's not empty, and there's an actual item in the player inventory array in that slot, then it'll do or use that particular item. Now, with the exception of the 1 and 2, they get called. This attach right hand prop gets called instead, because those are props that when you're hitting button 1 or 2, you're wanting to select that item. We're not at this point. We're not left-clicking the mouse to use it. These are just selecting the item to attach it to the hand. So, and so what it does is, again, using the index value passed in, we get the item name from the player inventory array here. See, the index value that's passed in here is referenced here. So that's how this code can be used actually be used multiple times, but right now we're only needing it for when the user hits the button 1 or 2 on the keyboard to select either the primary or secondary weapon. And so this code is all the same. This really doesn't change. If you look at this, it's just checking if the item name returned. If it's empty, it's not going to execute any of this code or even check. But the next thing it does is see, okay, do we have a prop already on the hand? If we do, right hand dot remove prop, that removes the prop from the hand, and it's no longer on there. And we set on to false, meaning the prop is not on there. And then that is checked in the next thing here. So if there's nothing in the hand, which it shouldn't be, because we want to remove it, we don't want to just add the prop that's being selected. Otherwise, you'll have multiple props shown on the screen. you can actually keep attaching these props, and they'll all show up at that prop location, the attachment location. So we got to remove it first, and then there's really no easy way, really, to get a prop from the Morph 3D character. I mean, this is the way they're showing it, and that's the way I did it. You basically, through the character manager, you call a function called get all loaded props, and it returns you back a list. And you set it up this way: a list of CI prop items, which is your props, and then you have to loop through using a for each kind of loop. You go through all props, and as it's going through the loop, it's assigning one item out of the props list into a prop variable, and then from there you can check. And what I'm doing is checking this item name that we extracted out before out of the player inventory index array. We're basically checking, okay, does the item name that's in the player inventory match the prop item name? And so we're kind of having to loop through all the props. And so if we find a match, that means that, first of all, I mean, we check if the item name is empty, then, you know, we're going to bypass the if statement. It won't even check this other part of the expression here. But if it's not empty, which means we don't have an empty slot in 1 or 2 on the screen, then we check compare the tag of the item name that we're trying to from the player inventory array against the prop item name that's in the prop list here. And if it finds a match, then we add that prop right here, right hand add prop, and we just pass it in the current instance of that prop as we're going through this loop. And once we do that, I don't want to keep adding multiple items, so we're going to just set on equal to true that we have something on the attachment point, and we hit or type just the word break, which breaks out of this for each loop, and we'll stop down here and then continue out, let it continue on. And so hence, you know, we just remove the prop to make sure everything's removed, and we only add one prop at a time by doing it this way. So this code is used for both the primary and secondary weapon. Later on, if there's some other category of items, you know, we could definitely use that. But you know, as we add multiple weapons, either in the primary or secondary categories, the same code will work, because you know, we're just passing in the index value from the player inventory, which is where that weapon primary or secondary would exist, and we're doing a name comparison of what's in the player inventory slot array, you know, array slot based on the index, versus does that name exist in the available props, you know, in the props master props collection, let's put it that way, that has been set up as a possibility of a prop to be attached to an attachment point. So this code will work as is right now for any other weapon primary secondary prop that we add to the system, or when we change up, you know, our master inventory and add new weapons and all that, it's going to work. So anyways, that's the code. Hopefully it's not too confusing. I mean, it really is. Once you see it, it's simple, especially when you see enough code, you'll see it's, you know, yeah. So when you press the 1 key or the 2 key, we're calling the attached right hand prop, either item 2 or 5, because that's where the primary secondary weapon could exist in the player inventory array. It may not exist, and if it doesn't, you know, it does this check. If the item name is empty, meaning there's nothing in that inventory item slot, player inventory item slot, it'll just bypass it. It won't even attempt to remove or attach a prop. So that's where it's working now. Now it's possible, I didn't think here, that prop dot, let's see what we have. Yeah, there is. Okay, and that's what I was wondering. Can we adjust the base position or the base rotation? And I see that there's right here. Let's see what this is. Yeah, it returns back a vector 3. It's the base rotation. So yeah, we could potentially set up the rotations we need right here, and we're going to try that in just a minute. I just wanted to go over the code for that. Let's see what else we have. Constant force, mesh. Yeah, I'd like to try that actually to see if we can change the rotation. So in the case of, well, let's say if our index is 2, that's going to be our pistol. So we could say here if index equals 2, just say primary weapon. We know we only have a pistol right now. We want to execute this little block of code in addition to what's going on here. And I guess we don't want to really do this unless we're getting ready to add it. Otherwise, we don't need to keep rotating things if it's not going to be added. But right before it's added, right here, we could say prop.base rotation. I don't know if it'll let us change the Y directly. Well, whatever it is, I want to add at 180 degrees to it because the gun was flipped around. You saw it was flipped around. So let's see if that will correct or remedy that. Just that statement right there. All right, other thing we need to do, I kind of added this character here in the scene. We need to remove him. Let's wait till it finishes compiling. I can see my cursor hadn't changed yet, so it's still compiling in the background. Wish they would show a better progress somewhere of like down in the status bar when it's compiling, like in the bottom right corner where they show it's updating the lighting or baking the lighting. Save the scene, so we got all that saved. I want to save the project in case it locks up. I had a lock up again earlier. I did something that locked it up, and I kept losing some changes I made to the project. So I'm getting in the habit of saving those. So I at least have everything the way it is. Okay, so let's run that. Let's see. Now I deliberately set up right here in front of me in this grass here. I set up a random spawn point that will spawn a gun only. It'll only spawn a primary weapon, which we only have one item to choose from, which is a pistol. So we should get a pistol here in just a minute. There it is. Just had to wait till the timer expired. It was not a 60-second timer, so it was going to take up to half of that time to spawn in, 30 seconds. So let's pick that up. Oh, look at that. It rotated. So now it's facing the right way, so that we can do that. Okay, this is good. So let's play around with that rotation. Now it looks like so now it's not facing backwards, but now we need to face it. Okay, that was our Y rotation. So we also need to rotate along the Z. Think of an imaginary laser coming out of the gun, out of the front barrel and out of the back, directly out of the back. That's essentially, on this prop here, that's going to be the Z component. The X component is kind of running horizontal with the ground here on his left and right at any given time. So it's in relative to his position. So it looks like we need to rotate the gun on the X as well. Let's rotate that first just so we get it the stock of the gun, or the clip part, facing downward. So it looks like we're going to have to rotate the gun on the Z for that. We got another pistol that loaded, but we don't need that. Okay, so let's exit. Unfortunately, these are code changes. We can't. This is the iterative testing I'm talking about. It's very time consuming. That's why it's good a lot of times if you have a script to set up the public variables that can control the input values going into that script from the inspector, because then you don't need to go back to the code. You can just go in the inspector and change the value and run it real quick. But you can also access the inspector at runtime and change values at runtime and while the game is running. You don't actually have to stop the game. This kind of stuff. Base rotation dot let's see if I get this right. I don't know how much. It looked like about 45. Dot z plus equals 0. I'm just going to have that set and ready to go, so it's already there. But essentially, let's take a look and see what that does. See, now we'll have to sit here and run it. Once we get it set, though, it's going to be set. I don't really like doing it this way. But like I said, it may be the only way because we're in fact not using the props that come with their system. We're incorporating our own, so we're going to have to fine tune all these. Once we get these values set, they're set. But again, I'm going to look at adding a attachment point by game object, because the game object would show up in the hierarchy while the game is running, and we can modify some values there. Alright, so let's go pick up our gun. And let's try to just face that way. I'm going to rotate around with the camera so we can see. Let's hit 1. Okay, so what that did, I flipped the gun, the wrong axis. It should have been the Z. That's what I was saying initially, but I did the X anyway, against my better judgment. Should have went with my gut instincts. Sometimes when he starts moving around, I start, you get disoriented. Okay, which way is X, which is Z? Because those are Y is obviously up and down, and you're, but so it's trying to visualize where was it at before, and it went there. It was about right. Let's set this to 45. That's 0. So let's see what that does. So once we get this gun in place, I mean, and we do the same. We're gonna do the same for the bat. We're gonna pick up a bat and we're gonna tweak it. Hey, while that's going on, let's do this other thing. I want to be able to remove the bat. Or like I said, once we attach one, we can flip between them, 1 or 2, to get the bat of the gun. But there was no way to remove it. Let me show you how easy it is to remove an item. We're going to add another key right here. We'll put it between the alphas and the mouse ones. Basically, we're going to use the backspace key. When you hit backspace, it will remove or put away. It basically puts away the item that you have pulled out in on 1 or 2, whether it be primary or secondary. It'll put that item away. And the way we basically do that is we just remove the prop. You already saw how we can remove a prop from the hand right here. It's essentially the same thing. We're going to copy this little bit of code here, because that's all we need. We just got to get the key right, which is the backspace. So input that. Oops. And I do it on a. I like to do the key up, the get key up versus the get key down. The get key down could potentially be triggered more than once, but when you release that key off the keyboard, you're raising up, you're tapping it, and you're letting go. As the key comes up, there's only one for sure, you're guaranteed only one key up to be called. So get key up, and in parentheses here we're going to do a key code. These are all constants that are predefined with some word. We're going to type B for backspace, and we're going to look for, there it is right there, backspace. So, and we can close our little block of code in the curly braces. And so we're going to say if on, meaning is there something attached, then since we know we're only attaching the right hand, you know, we just can do right hand dot remove prop and set on equal to false. So that'll take care of that. That's as simple as that. I just wanted to get that done so it was in there. Alright, so let's run this now. Alright, so let's, yeah, we'll just sprint around and jump. We're waiting for our pistol to, I should put another spawn spot here for the secondary weapon, so I don't have to run around looking for one. It'll just show up here, so we can test that bat out real easy. There it is. Alright, so let's rotate. Alright. So it looks like it rotated it the wrong way, basically. So we're going to do a negative value of that to get it going the way it needs to go. So let's do this, this. Back to our code. And plus equal to negative 45. So let's do that. Again, this is just playing around. So, I mean, y'all, basically this is what I'll be doing. It's going to take a little while to tweak through this. I'm going to continue to do this until I get the pistol and the bat straight. And if I can get that done today, where things are looking good, I'll show you actually a little trick I did with aiming. Because initially you had my crosshair, when I would display it by clicking the right mouse button, would show up on his back, like you're shooting yourself in the back, because of the way the rendering works. So I did a little trick here. If you look, if I right click, so you see the crosshair there. What it does, it's doing a zoom. You can see it zooming in. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm moving the camera forward. That's the trick I did. I just moved the camera forward, so the camera is actually right at where the, well, slightly before the player, but if I look down too far, you can see a shadow. And you look really far, you start to see inside his pants and his leg. You look down his pant leg, and you see the grass down there, if you really look down there. But that's the best I could do. I didn't want to go too far out. You can turn around, I guess, look backwards. But by having it here, for the most part, unless you really, or if you're really looking down low, though, you're going to start seeing the pants. But who's going to be shooting down at the ground, at a person or another enemy? You're going to be up here. So, yeah, so you can aim up high, too, and you get no character in the way. So you get a free obstructive view aiming. Now, one thing I will do, which I had before when I was trying to play around with just using a regular game object and doing it not with the attachment point system I have, I was just trying to place the gun, like fake it by placing the gun right here. I just had a gun in the midair, but his hand was not where it should have been, so I had to change that. Alright, so let's grab our great, we got a bat. Perfect. Okay, so there's our bat. Let's hit backspace, see if it goes back. Yes, there we go. Hit 1. We got our gun. Hit backspace. Boom. Hit 1 again. Let's remove it. Let's hit 1 again. Remove it. Huh. What it's doing is it's, once you alter the base, I guess it remembers it, which I don't really want it to do that. That's going to be a problem. So that's not where the code needs to go. All these settings need to be configured. So now I can hit 1. Look, I can see it flipping around various directions. It's about the closest right there. So we had initially, I think. Now we just need to tweak it. So what I'm going to do is figure out what those values are. We need to essentially pull it down a little bit more into the hand and have it pointing to the ground. Really, but the hand in that position needs to be pointing more toward the ground, because when his hands come up and jump, you'll see the gun moves with his hand. So it'll be in whatever position the hand is pointing. And then next we'll work on actually aiming, taking control of his arms and actually doing some aiming poses. But we need to get the props facing the right direction before we can make that happen. Or before I really want to fool with it. Alright, so I'll be playing around with that. I just wanted to show really the progress of where things are going. We've got an attachment system working on. I'm going to have to tweak the stuff, and you kind of see what I'm having to do with and struggle with on getting this straight. So once I have all that working, and the next thing I'll do, like I said, I'll move on controlling his arms and getting him repositioned where I need to. Again, I'm using the basic locomotion vector third-person controller basic locomotion light. It's a free version, so they only give you the locomotion part, which is moving around. They don't give you the aiming and all that other stuff that they have built in their full shooter template, which I may wind up, like I said, I may wind up doing that because I'm sure it's fine-tuned really well. But if I can get it working, I kind of want to just see if I can get it going, because I learn something new every time I fiddle around with someone else's code. So, and I learn how to integrate or add things to it that don't already come with it. And anyway, for example, like just even zooming, the camera is part of the Invector. The camera is tied to their character. They have their own Invector camera system with this. So that things that work in conjunction with their locomotion system and movement and all this. So I had to get in there and figure out how to relocate their camera to do this thing right here. Just a simple thing of aiming and moving the camera forward, which at that point it's almost like a first person. You could almost take this and move the camera permanently if I wanted to go to a first person mode to this position, and someone could be playing as in first person mode even though it's with a third person controller. So it could simulate that without having, because they do have well, they don't have a first person controller. Unity in their standard asset package includes a basic first person and third person controller, but they're garbage, really, to be honest with you. They're great for experimenting if you just want to throw something out there and you're building a terrain, you want to walk around. But you saw in the early streams how bad their controllers work when the terrain is not flat. If it's flat, it works fine. As soon as it starts hitting any kind of curve or hill or slope or cliff or anything, the whole control system goes to crap. And the player starts, when you move running forward, he starts hooking to the left or to the right just randomly. And I battled with it quite a bit, and everyone and all the research I did, I found out a lot of people had the same issue, complained of the same problems, and ultimately they just give you the basics. To fine-tune that, you have to either really dig deep and learn, and basically, enhance and redevelop their existing, the base that they provided you, or go with what I did. This is the best bet for me. It was free, and it was the Invector locomotion only system. It was the free one. They had the light, and so I'm gonna modify their code. Their code is all their movement and everything is done through code, which I like. And it's clean. It looks better. It's easier to navigate and understand what's going on. So anyways, I'll be working on getting this fixed. Once I have it fixed, I'll do another stream just to showcase, the changes that were made and what it took, if I remember, because sometimes I go through so many different iterations before I come to, the final result of what worked. And, I'm not going to sit here and document me trying 100 different ways to get it to work, and maybe the last one works. I'm not going to go over all the mistakes. I'll just show what worked to get it to do what you want, basically what worked. Because someone else out there that is also maybe using this Invector free locomotion, and you want to know how to be able to do some of this stuff, you might want to know that, like switching from this to the first person. I can show you that real quick. That wasn't too bad. Okay, what I wound up having to do was go into, on the character, you got the basic controller light. I basically was playing around with some settings there, and if you look at on the camera itself, the V third-person camera that's in here, they have a little control panel here in the inspector. You can manipulate the values, but ultimately what I wound up changing only was this default distance. 2.5 is what they have it set to by default for a third-person view. And so what I wound up doing, if we go to the script, let's actually do that. I'll show this real quick and then we'll head out. The things that I've added, you can see this is what I had to add. This was their script, okay? And so in the list of class variables that are set up here, at the very bottom, I just added my own private bool called aiming, aiming. So just to indicate when I'm aiming and not. Because if you don't have something like that, you'll see in a minute why. Now in the init, I set the aiming to false. All I do is initialize that variable. That's called one time. The init is called one time at start. Now, they have this fixed update function. And this is where I modified and added this code. They just had this first line, and they had this camera movement, or it calls camera movement down. There's another function down there called camera movement, which does the actual camera movement. They like to keep it clean in the fixed update, so it's easy to see. And I probably could move some of this code out and probably create a function, called whatever, check mouse buttons, and put it in there. But initially, I put it in there. Once it's, while I know it's working good, I may move it to clean this up and keep it clean like like they have it. Anyways, I added this stuff right here. And so the way it works is it sets the be aiming to true or false, whether I'm aiming or not, based on whether you're right-clicking. Button 1 again is a right-click, whether you're holding down the right mouse button or not. When you press it down, it goes to true. As soon as you release it, button up, and it sets it to false. Now, based on that, because this is called, fixed update is called every frame, and it's guaranteed to be called every frame. Sometimes the regular update, it is called every frame, but sometimes it may or may not get around to being called on that frame because of the number of updates that are going on. It could be queued up, for example. It'll eventually get called, but called late, for example. What fixed update does is it guarantees that this will be called this frame. So whatever code is in here will be guaranteed to be called definitely in this frame. The frame will not be rendered until Unity, the Unity engine, executes this code in fixed update, and that's a good reason to use that. But you don't want to have everything in there, because it really is to have it guaranteed every frame like that, it gets expensive. But in this case, I needed to, and to keep it within their setup here. So I set that be aiming to true or false, and then based on whether I'm aiming or not, they have a variable called distance, which initially this variable is passed into and set every frame, which initially set the default distance. And so initially I just changed it in the inspector, and then but it only set it one time, and then it seemed to reset it. So I wound up having to go in here and put it in this fixed update to make sure that distance is always set. Like if we're aiming, we're holding down that right mouse button, we haven't let go, then be aiming is always going to be set to true every frame, every time fixed update is run. And so the distance will continually be reset to -1.5 or set, because it will, if you don't do this, if you just do it in the init part one time, it actually gets overridden in their code that they have, and so it has to be reset each frame. And so this is done here. So as soon as you let go and it's false, it'll set it back to the default distance, which is the third-person view. -1.5 is what I found. When you set that distance to -1.5, that's where you get the camera where I had it, where it was inside the player at that point, or just in front of, and you can look down. Actually, it's in front of the player just a little bit. If you get too far, like at 0, you're actually seeing you're inside the player, and you see you're looking at his chest or doing something like, some view that really gets looks awful. Let's put it that way. So that was it. I think that was the only change I had to make. That was that simple. I'm looking here if there's anything else I ever modified. I don't think there was. That ultimately was what it wound up. I did toy around with something else, but it came down to that. Setting up a class variable called be aiming. Initially setting it to false, so we're not aiming. When the user clicks the right mouse button, it sets be aiming to true. Release the mouse button, the right one, sets it to false, and then based on the value of be aiming, whether it's true or false, it'll set the distance to a first-person distance or a third-person. So that's essentially all you need to do if you're using the free vector thing. And make sure you do this change. Again, I don't know if you get access to the third-person camera script, like while it's set as a prefab. You have to pull the prefab in, I believe. Like, well, no, maybe not. Maybe not in this, because. But if it doesn't show up, where you can access it through the prefab, you have to bring in an instance into your scene, and then modify whatever you need to there, and access the script and make these changes, and then make sure you apply the changes back to your prefab, and then remove that instance from the screen. So, anyways, yeah, that was it. Let's jump back out here. And yeah, I'll keep playing around with this. Now that I know I don't have to do anything more in this character here, I'm going to delete him out of the scene. And this way I'll just have mine that's being, let's make sure that's still working. The one that's coming from the prefab, our prefabs folder, master inventory. And we can still aim, all that's working. I do notice that sometimes if you go a little too fast, you see how you get that little jitter, because the rotation is so fast, and it does a lerp. Basically, it's doing a lerp, which is a slow transition over a series of frames to get your character, when you're walking, to actually turn that way. Now there is a way to lock it where it's like as soon as you turn, your character turns, and I may wind up doing that to eliminate that. But it's got this kind of, I do kind of like the idea that you can almost look a little bit before he actually starts turning in that direction. But you get that little, like when it hits that point until it smooths out and it's actually looking in the way you're going, you get that little jitter, which to me is aggravating. At some point it does bug my eyes. that may be an issue, and we may have to change it. Because they do have the free rotation. When you're standing still, you can free rotate. But when you're moving, I may change it so that as you move the camera, he instantly rotates. And so there's no, it doesn't lerp and snap to that thing where it does the little, little jiggle. Alright, so let's pick that up. It's in slot 1. Can we use it? Let's hit slot 3. Now, see, we hit slot 3. I'm hitting button 3. Will not equip a gun from there. You can hold it in that slot if it's a free slot. You just want to hold it there for pickup purposes. You have no other general slots to put in, but hit 1, boom. So we do have it on the initial thing. I've got it facing the right direction, just not quite where it needs to be. So I'm going to keep playing around with this. So I'm going to end the stream at this, so you're not having to watch just me just going through iterations and iterations getting straight. You'll see the next stream, which will have the corrected version of that as well as the bat. We'll have those in place, and then we'll start throwing a few AIs out there and get them to just, we'll probably take another player and just throw them out there and if you have players spawn randomly, and we'll try to work on damaging those players and knocking down their health and getting them down to, once they get down to 0, they'll get destroyed. I also want to, for your enemies, where you see above their head their health, shield, and stamina, maybe we'll show little 3 bars represent those, maybe as they're moving around. You'll be able to see that. This way we got a visual indication. As we're damaging a player too, we can see the damage actually occurring by having those bars get reduced. And we may or may not, on AIs, I guess that'd be fine, especially during testing. We may or may not want that in the final game, like would another player want you to know what health they're at? Probably not. But for testing, I think it'd be great to have something like that. Some games do that. I think WoW does it. As well as show a player name maybe at the top above their head, floating. So we may do that. But right now, my goal is to get the gun, the bat in line. Of course, the bat can do damage with itself, but with the pistol, I want to be able to create. We're going to create a script that will fire bullets. I want to be able to fire. That's the next thing, because once we can fire, then we get to the point and we can do damage with the bat. We can start looking at bringing in some AI and start working with some of that, some of the enemy AI. Anyway, thanks again for stopping out. Let me do one last thing. I like to do this. I guess I can do this off stream. I was going to capture an image. I do that off stream. I like to do a clip showing the new UI elements that were added and the fact that we can aim. That's pretty cool. I may do that. As a matter of fact, it'll just be looking forward with an aim. Let's see, short. Yeah, that looks best in that view. I'll do that off stream though. So let me stop this for now. And thanks again for stopping out. If you're not a current subscriber, definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I apologize, I did not have the live stream open in the browser. So if you were typing stuff in the chat, I would not have seen it. Please type it in the comments to this video once YouTube finishes processing everything, and it'll probably take about 30 minutes. That's what it normally takes. And I'll of course update the default thumbnail image to something that represents the new changes here. And yeah, just post any comments there. I'll be reading those comments, and I hope you enjoyed or learned a little bit about what we've added and what we're working towards. So I think it's coming along and things are improving. We're getting to a point where we're going to start seeing some actual gameplay soon, not just running around and interacting on a solo basis. So with our own stuff. So that'll be exciting at that point. Getting something actual playable. When I get to that point, I'm going to be looking for some people to test it and make sure things work the way they do, and Initially, it'll be just AI enemies, and that are spawning in throughout the world randomly. And I'll set it up in a way that when you kill an enemy, you'll get so much gold for that and so much experience instead of having this automatic freebie stuff being given away. We'll of course stop that so that we can see, like, we know an enemy is worth a certain amount of gold and experience. I can see, if those numbers are accurately being added to the total. So, and then later on, once we get all that worked out, like I said, I might, since I already have this in place where it can do free gold and free experience, be a great incentive, like to get people to play the game that during certain times, like a weekend. A lot of games will do on special weekends, experience and boosts and gold, whatever, rank boosts. Be a great way to boost it. You get every second you play, you get 1 gold, 1 experience. So you get people logging into the game, playing it. That's down the road, though. Long time down the road. Anyway, thanks again for stopping out. Appreciate everyone that's been viewing, and please give feedback. That'll help guide the direction of what I'm doing. And of course, if you have any suggestions, a little bit more than I do about this, or a lot more, definitely give me some input, some feedback. I take both negative and positive feedback on this, so don't be afraid to tell me something that you think I'm not going to like to hear. Just tell me. I want to hear. Anyway, y'all have a good weekend. Take care now. I believe it's time for a hamburger. Phone.